Welcome to the How to Be Awesome at Your Job podcast.
Common ground is the biggest load of BS you can have in negotiation. If we can get the other person to feel seen, heard, and understood, then we've earned the right to then start to look to influence and persuade them to our way of thinking. The number one skill of all the top negotiators out there is this ability to emotionally self-regulate. Because it's no good if I'm there with a family who are losing it. They're breaking down, understandably, they're highly emotional. And if I'm the same or I haven't got my own act together, it's not going to come across very well.
That's Scott Walker. He's a former hostage negotiator who's helped resolve over 300 crises, including kidnapping, piracy, and cyber-extortion attacks. Now he shares his expertise to organizations all over the world through his workshops and keynote speeches. And today, he's going to share some of his best wisdom for your next high-stakes conversation. So you'll learn 1, the number 1 skill of master negotiators. 2 tricks to help prepare you for any conversation. And 3, how more pies helps you build rapport. Yes, that's an acronym, more pies. I'm Pete Makaitis. This is How to Be Awesome at Your Job. And now, here's Scott. Scott, welcome.
Thanks for having me. Good to be here.
Oh, it's great to have you. And I think we must start with a thrilling hostage negotiation story.
A thrilling hostage negotiation story, just like the movies, obviously, because that's how every single one, where the helicopter gunship comes in and there's a mass battle. I like to say, actually, before I get into the story, is if there was a fly on the wall for 99% of these kidnap-for-ransom negotiation situations, people will be thinking, is that it in terms of where's the high drama, where's the high stakes? But that's the last thing we want. If things are getting really off the chart, we're kind of doing our job wrong. But you want a story? Let me give you a story. Okay. A few years ago, I was in Africa, on a case in West Africa, and 6 people have been taken off a ship by pirates and were being held to ransom by the kidnappers, by the pirates, for several millions of dollars. And my job was to work alongside the families and the company whom the hostages belong to. And usually there's a bit of a delay until we hear from the kidnappers, their initial demands, we've got your people, but it's taking a long time. I'm looking around the table. There's lots of senior people here, and I've kind of given them, this is how it's going to play out. You trust me, follow me. This is how it's all going to work out. And it's not, nothing's really happening. But then, as if the universe is listening, the phone rings and they say, yeah, we've got your people. We want $5 million and we want it by the end of the week or we're going to kill them. And then you can hear a pin drop. And I turn to the guy I'm using as the communicator and we agree a strategy about, okay, for the next few calls, we're going to get a proof of life. We're going to come back with an initial offer to manage their expectations. And everybody, family as well, we need to be prepared for some conflict, for some threats. And this is standard practice. So anyway, the next week or 2.5 weeks goes by, and we get them from 5 million down to about 500,000, I think it was.
Oh, 10x. There you go. Good work, sir.
Yeah, and it's not about saving money. And there's a reason why we do that. And I can get into afterwards. And it's relevant to workplace negotiations as well. But it's taking its toll. It's making the guy that I'm using super stressed. He's a broken man. And I realize in that moment, actually, we need to do something here. Kidnapper's phone again. And he's like, hey, you need to give us more time. You've got our people. You must look after them. They're your responsibility. And then this booming voice comes out from the phone saying, no, they're yours. We want the money by Friday or we will execute them. And the communicator smashes his fist against the table. And I think that is going to come my way any second. But he walks out and I realize unless I can reestablish the trust, make sure the rapport is there, influence and persuade and bring about some kind of cooperation with him, we're not going to get anywhere here and the hostages are going to die. The kidnappers can wait. They're easy to deal with. At the end of the day, kidnappers are just businessmen looking for a great deal. That's it. And so I need a emotional intelligence 101. And over the course of 24, 36 hours, I get the communicator around. He jumps on the next call and we agree a deal of about $300,000 in the end. And then a few days later, the hostages come back, of which that in itself was interesting. And depends how long the podcast is. I could go on and on about, maybe I can say the second part of the story for later on, but some key points from that as well. Hopefully that whets your appetite.
Well, it does. And that's really, really fascinating that you're not so much worried about the kidnappers who are making demands and threatening to kill people as you are about your relationship with the guy talking on the phone in the same room. That's intriguing. And so you're experienced and you sort of know the stakes and what's going on. And so I'm intrigued. How'd you solve that problem with that person that you're working with, communicating?
Well, first of all, let's just take a step back here and just have a look at what is a negotiation. People get scared. They run a mile when the term negotiation gets bandied around. It's simply a conversation with a purpose. And I think it's fair to say the world needs us all to be able to have better conversations right now. You know, everyone's shouting, no one is listening. And so there's an art, there's a skill to having better conversations with people, if they're kidnappers, teenage kids, or you're working for a big corporate. But in terms of, let's look at a negotiation per se, there are three elements of that. There's the other side you've got to manage. There's your own side. And then there's your internal emotions, your own mindset. And so we often overlook our own side and we call it the crisis within the crisis. So this is when, again, let's just take a business setting where dealing with your clients and the customers is the easy bit. You know, it's relatively straightforward, but you've got the egos, the internal politics, the competing demands, the silo mentality, the competing budgets, whatever it is, all vying for your attention. It's just noise on your side of the table. And that actually would take 80% of my time to manage on a case on our own side. But again, it's taking a step back and looking, okay, what's really going on here? What is this person's underlying needs and wants? Is it they just want to save face? Is it they want a bit of control? Are they just an ego-driven boss that likes the sound of their own voice? And they're easy to deal with because it's all about them. And you can play to that. And we can go on to that a bit later about some of those techniques about what we can do to achieve that.
Okay. Well, there's already so much to dig into there. So 80% internal stuff. That sounds annoying and frustrating to folks like myself. Activator. It's one of my top strengths. I like to get stuff done. Let's make it happen. And this dealing with all the internal stuff is a bummer. And yet you understand that is often necessary for it to take up the majority of your efforts, as unpleasant or annoying as that may be to some personalities, so as to get a good outcome. And so in this instance, you need to sort through something with your communicator. And Scott, the human person needs completion on a story. Lay it on us. How did you resolve that?
Sure. Okay. Well, again, there's two things to remember here as well. In a negotiation, yes, there's problem solving. You want to gather some information to solve a problem, which in your personality type there, the behavioral trait is you want to get stuff done. And that is a natural instinct, particularly in the corporate world. Come on, let's get it done. But that can overlook the second fundamental aspect, which is about establishing and building relationships. Because unless you can do that, the gold medal, the desired outcome of every negotiation really is some kind of cooperation or collaboration. And you can't do that if it's, I'm going for my target, get out of my way, I'm coming through. That can serve sometimes, but if we want a long-term client for life, a great team culture, it's about establishing those relationships. Funnily enough, on this case, obviously working, lots of empathy, active listening, validating with the communicator. He comes on board, we get the deal, but just because we've got an agreement, it's not the same as the safe and timely release of the hostages, because they could get picked up by another gang. They could fall ill or injured after being released. Who knows? So we get the money, the ransom money, $300,000 in 2 bags. And we got to get across the border from one country to the next. And we use a courier, some brave soul who's had lots of courage for breakfast, who then follows instructions by the kidnappers to get to where they need to get to. And meanwhile, the kidnappers are phoning me on our team, checking in to make sure every 4 hours that it's going according to plan. 4 hours go by, we don't hear anything from the courier. 8 hours go by, still nothing. And you can see where this is going now. 12 hours, nothing. 13 and a bit hours later, we get a phone call. The courier has been intercepted by the local police who are refusing to let him go all the money. Cut a very long story short, we managed to fly a very important person, trusted community elder down, speak to the chief of police, who then releases the courier and the money. Well, most of the money, obviously local taxes. And we think, great, the courier can get back on the road. This is our problem solving, remember? Easy. But then the courier wants nothing to do with it. So that relationship is shattered and he does a run-up. So we have to find somebody else. But meanwhile, the kidnappers are going apoplectic. They think we're trying to rip them off. We're trying to ambush them. They're going to get killed. And I'm just thinking, oh, this is a bad day in the office, really. But again, it's about problem solving, but importantly, it's about establishing trust and developing those relationships. And thankfully, over the course of the last month or so, we built a really good working business relationship with the kidnappers. So we've got that in the bank. So as I was able to placate them, eventually we find somebody else who takes the money, goes out to sea to a waypoint where the kidnappers come out. And this is one of those very, very rare moments where there's a near simultaneous exchange of ransom money for hostages. So the hostages get back on our boat and the kidnappers hand them a mobile phone, a clean mobile phone. And they say, if it's okay with you, we're going to escort you to safety in case you get intercepted or you get into trouble. And then even if you do so later on, give us a call on this phone and we'll come and help you out. No extra charge. And it's like, talk about customer service and client loyalty. And so they escort them back to safety and then we pick them up and everybody's happy. So there's some key things there around trust, building those relationships. Don't be in a rush too quickly to problem solve. And until you can really identify and deal with those high, powerful emotions, you could potentially land yourself in even more trouble.
Yeah. So again, so much there. And then with your own communicator, rewinding a little bit, how did you resolve that issue there?
Suspending my own ego about what needs to happen. It'd been easy for me to go, come on, pull yourself together, get in there, get on the phone. Your friends are going to die unless you pull this out of the bag. That could have been that's probably the worst thing that I could have done. Thankfully, I didn't. It is using techniques like lots of empathy and emotional labeling. And empathy, people can confuse that with sympathy or compassion. But really, empathy it's a doing word. You do empathy rather than feel it. The other side feels trust and rapport if you can demonstrate empathy properly. And empathy is really me with the communicator, kind of reflecting back to him where I think he is at and what's going on for him. Okay, John, it seems like you're taking this personally for what's happened to your friends here, and that you feel personally responsible that they've found themselves in this situation, and that this is really not going to get anywhere. Simple things when we use terms like it looks like, it sounds like, it feels like, and you can label, which anybody listening or watching this with any kind of semblance of knowledge around communicating and active listening, these are really powerful. They're simple but not easy to do. And particularly when the stakes can't get any higher, when people's lives are on the line, it works, but it also works with your kids and the workplace. So by doing lots of active listening with the communicator, he was able to come back on board. And basically, he felt crucial. This is crucial. He felt seen, heard, and understood. And until we can feel that, particularly if we disagree with somebody, if we can get the other person to feel seen, heard, and understood, then we've earned the right to then start to look to influence and persuade them to our way of thinking.
That's lovely. And two of my favorite guests on the show, we had Chris Voss, who wrote the book Never Split the Difference, and Michael Sorensen, who wrote the book I Hear You, all about validation. And they had some similar messages there associated with empathy and validation, and that it seems like, it looks like, it feels like, and how that is just magical. Even in surprising situations, like someone has robbed a bank and they have hostages, and it's like, oh, if you just have, it seems like you feel kind of stuck and scared about, the situation you're in right now. It's like, in some ways, it's like, duh. Yeah. What the heck am I supposed to do? But it's kind of amazing that it does take some internal emotional mastery to get past the fact that they don't deserve the dignity or honor or respect or whatever nice goodness of this warm validation stuff. Like these kinds of rage thoughts can start circulating in these circumstances, and even at work too. My boss is a jerk. Like, he doesn't deserve that I put in this extra effort to blah blah blah. So help us out, Scott. When we're in that place, how should we think about it?
Well, first thing that comes to mind there is when people say, find the common ground. Come on, find the common ground here so you can build that rapport. But, from your previous guests, I'm sure they said something similar around common ground is the biggest load of BS you can have in negotiation, because I had zero common ground with kidnappers. Anybody with kids listening to this, with siblings, that's the biggest link, biggest common thread, common ground you'll ever have with anybody as a sibling. But how often do they fight and look for attention and seeking validation? And so really it's about approaching any form of conversation, negotiation, with the golden rule that it's not about you. If I go in seeking to understand, okay, Pete, where are you at with this? What are your challenges and issues? How do you view me, maybe in this deal? If I can put myself there and then use the active listening, the empathy, the labeling to check that, and we keep working on that, time spent doing that and establishing that trust and that rapport, using that empathy, is time well spent, because I've seen it so many times where people rush to problem solve and they allow their own egos to get in the way. And so it's about realizing that you can't separate the person from the problem. Sometimes we hear that, don't we? Well, separate the person, the emotions, get them out of the way, and actually we can look at it rationally, logically about how to approach this. But again, you may get one or two wins like that, but ultimately what you want is this long-term repeat business, or establish this rapport and this friendship or this relationship that's going to last. And that requires you to deal with the emotions first. And I'd say the number one skill of all the top negotiators out there, in my experience, is this ability to emotionally self-regulate. Because it's no good if I'm there with a family who are losing it. They're breaking down, understandably, they're highly emotional, highly strung. And if I'm the same, or I haven't got my own act together, it's not going to come across very well. And emotions are contagious if we let them, which is why, when I wrote the book as well, it called it Order Out of Chaos. For that very reason, my job in a negotiation is simply to bring order out of the chaos that reigns, whether or not it's in the family kitchen or in the boardroom where the negotiations are taking place from.
All right, Scott. So number one is emotional regulation. Okay. So lay it on us. How do we do that effectively?
And again, I learned this the hard way in my very first negotiation where it nearly went wrong, where I allowed my own emotions to be hijacked, so to speak. And thankfully, a very more senior negotiator colleague of mine, he kind of interrupts my pattern just by the little hand on my shoulder. And then I'll watch a masterclass as to how he really did that, how he regulated his own emotions and those of other people. And over the years, over 10, 12, 13 years doing it, I came up with this immediate action drill. It's a 3-step process, the IA drill, that I use to this day. Even though I won't be negotiating with kidnappers, I still use it in traffic, or I'm in a line somewhere and go on social media. And, you get that triggered. You find that frustration, something really it presses your buttons. And so the first step is interrupting that pattern. And what that means is, if you're sat down behind a laptop, actually just stand up and go outside and get some fresh air, or put some music on, Or if it's your thing, go and do some jumping jacks in the corner, or just do some deep breathing. Whatever it is for you to interrupt that spiral where you're looking to name, blame, or shame, or to be overwhelmed by the urge to say or do something which you may later regret. Because once you've interrupted the pattern, the first step, and the second step is ride the wave. Ride the wave. And for any skiers, surfers, skateboarders out there, you're really surfing the waves or you're skiing down the mountain, you're kind of riding the wave. And what that really alludes to is when you get hit by that trigger, you have about 90 seconds, 2 minutes, where you've got cortisol, adrenaline, and other powerful drugs pouring through your body, coursing through your body. This is when you get the tense, and this is when you say and do things which you later regret. And so really, you've got to be able to expand your awareness, so to speak, at least internally, as to what's going on for you. And it's about feeling the feeling, but dropping the story as to why you're feeling it. So it could be, do you know what, I'm feeling a real churning in my stomach or a tightness or tension in my shoulders. It doesn't matter why I'm feeling. It doesn't matter that Pete has just said something that's really annoyed me. It doesn't matter. For now, I need to interrupt the pattern. I need to ride that wave for 90 seconds or 2 minutes. And then the third step, once I've allowed my nervous system and my body and my emotions to calm down, is to ask better questions. And you can only ask better questions such as, okay, what am I missing here? What else could this mean? What's the opportunity? What's the learning here? How else could I look at this? Questions that when you're in that fight or flight, when you just want to say something or you want to punch somebody, you're not going to come up with those questions, or you're going to dismiss them really quickly. So you've got to interrupt the pattern. You've got to ride the wave. And then and only then can you ask really better, open, really empowering questions that can maybe open up a new perspective of how you can present yourself, or actually how you can communicate to somebody else. And you can do this before a really important negotiation or presentation. You can just check in with yourself and do that 3-step process. Or in the middle of it, when the metaphorical bullets are flying, you can do it then. And no one needs to know you're doing this. You could just do this, sat at the boardroom table, take a couple of breaths, ride the wave, and ask yourself internally a few better questions to give you some more insights.
Beautiful. Thank you. And I think my favorite part there was when you talk about riding the wave, you're feeling the feeling, but you're not engaging the story. Sort of like you're feeling anger. And so you can recognize the bodily sensations of anger. It's like, okay, my eyes want to squint. I have a bit of like a growling breathing, and my fists are getting a little tight, a little fist-like. And that's, so I can experience that feeling and just ride the wave, just experience it as it goes through me, instead of interrogating the emotion like, why is this so ridiculous and unfair and bad and stupid and yada, yada, yada. I'm just experiencing those feelings without the story. So then is your mind just kind of like empty-ish as you're riding the wave?
Not whilst I'm riding the wave, no, it'd be full of judgment. It's like, how on earth could they be so stupid to come up with that decision? What were they thinking of? But then it's being aware that you're coming up with that story and just letting it go. And you've got to ride that wave. You've got to just tune into the body, the sensation of, right, just breathe through it. And the more you can practice it, it's like anything, it's muscle memory, the easier it becomes.
And I guess what I'm saying there is, as you're tuning into your bodily sensations, you're naturally tuning a bit away from your internal verbalizations of the words you're hearing in your head about how this is ridiculous and enraging.
Yes, because in 10, 20, 30, 50, 60 years' time, you're not going to be raging, or that story's not going to be going around inside your head. If it is, you may need to let some stuff go because you're not going to worry about it then. So actually, why don't you bring in a mindset that you can come up with some solutions? You can resolve the issues from a grounded, balanced place of equanimity rather than that Pete, he's to blame, I'm going to whatever. And that serves nobody. And we see it all the time now. People becoming far more polarized and I'm right, you're wrong, and I'm going to do everything I can to prove that, and I'm going to cancel you in the meantime. Whereas actually it's like, let me just stop for a second and let me just try and clarify where I think you're at with this particular topic. Check in to make sure I've got that right. Is it okay now, because I've earned the right, to now offer my viewpoint? Great. And let's see where we can find a way through this. Simple, but not easy.
All right. So we talked about emotional regulation. And now tell me, when it comes to identifying your counterpart's underlying needs, what are your favorite approaches to elicit that information?
Preparation is key. In the times of crisis and when you're under stress, you rise or fall to the level of your preparation. Even though, as we know, the best laid plans often don't survive the first contact with the enemy, you still need to go through that. You still need to spend the time as much as you can. And one of those ways of doing that, there's two steps really. The first one is ABC. And this was drilled into me as a young detective at Scotland Yard, the training school, was assume nothing, believe nothing, and challenge and clarify everything. And so if you and I, Pete, are going to enter into a business deal, the worst thing I can do is to assume I know where you're at, how this is going to work out. And I need to clarify, I need to check my own understanding, I need to do my homework. And then I need to do what I call come up with a bunch of fives. So you do your ABC, and then you come up with a bunch of fives, as in the palm of your hand. And what that does is it reminds you that you've got to come up with, say, 5 challenges, issues, questions, threats, demands that you on the other side are likely to raise that might get in the way of this deal. So if I can identify what those are, it can help me to start to build a picture of what is Pete really after here. And I can test those hypotheses, and that's all they are at the start of our conversation, our negotiation. And you'll either confirm, clarify, or say, no, I don't know where you got that from. Okay. And then, but through asking better questions and through that labeling and paraphrasing quite quickly, the other side will signal, albeit subconsciously, what their real needs are. For example, if somebody is going for a job interview and it's all about the job title, it's about the perks, you know really, really quickly that significance and a sense of control and certainty and a bit of ego are really important to them. So if you want to get the best out of them, you can't go in and judging them as to, well, they're not a really good employer. Well, actually, they could be a really good employer, but their needs are going to be different to yours, which may be, hey, it's all about the team. It's all about balance, which is a completely different approach, perhaps, to that. So it's getting your ABCs, it's coming up with your bunch of fives. And then when the conversation, the negotiation has started, it's really just listen. I call it level 5 listening. The first couple of levels are where you're just listening for the gist, or you're listening so I can rebut what you've said because, hey, after all, I'm right and you're wrong, or I've got the better deal. And then you can kind of go down to level 5, which is I'm almost listening for what you're not saying. I'm listening for the space in between the words. What's the tone? Like, is there incongruency and mismatch between what you're saying and how you're saying it, or even your body language if we're in person? Which is why, as part of the preparation and the planning, I would ideally, if we're going to meet in person, is have somebody whose sole job was just to sit and observe. They weren't going to take part in the negotiation. Because when you're in it, as happened with the communicator in that story I mentioned at the beginning, is you can be very focused on the challenge at hand and you can miss all these cues where somebody's got a slight step back. They can spot these. And afterwards, when you go for a break, they can go, hey, do you know what? There's a real incongruency there. I think they're hiding something. We need to perhaps dig a little deeper on that particular topic, which because you didn't see it, you just skirted over and you moved on to the next one. Does that make sense?
Certainly. And you mentioned a number of underlying needs there associated with control or significance. Can you share with us, do you have kind of a go-to menu or checklist you're thinking about in terms of, these things come up often in terms of people's underlying needs and I'm kind of looking out for?
Yeah, essentially, there's many behavioral assessments you can take and these profiles and all very similar, as well as the needs that we want to experience as human beings. So we know full well, a lot of us, we want a semblance of control. We want to be able to call the shots about what we do in our life. There's an element of we want to feel important or different, or we want that connection. It's all about people. Or actually, we're just a lover and a giver, and all we want to do is give all the time, and it's about growing as a person. And so you can the more you engage with people and truly start listening at that deeper level 5 level, you can pick up these.
Okay, thank you. When it comes to the validation, empathy, active listening, reflection, language, do you have any top do's or don'ts we should keep in mind here?
Well, first of all, there's a mnemonic that I love using that just reminds me of this and enables me to apply it when I need to. And I always advise people to eat more pies. You want to eat more pies. MOREPIES. And just very, very quickly what they are. And I've got stuff on my website that people can go to and actually have a look at that in more detail. These are things like the minimal encouragers or the open questions or using paraphrasing or silence or labeling, for example, or mirroring. And so these techniques are contained within that mnemonic. And the do's and don'ts there are, don't treat them as a checklist. With any of these techniques, with any of these approaches, intention matters. You've got to be able to approach it from, first of all, I just need to understand and demonstrate that understanding of where the other person is at. Not, okay, tick, rapport. Yeah, I've got rapport. Now I'm going to do a bit of labeling. Now I'm going to do a bit of mirroring. It's actually approach it with the right intention, genuinely listen, and you'll be doing a lot of this stuff anyway. It's just bringing a bit of consciousness, a bit of intentionality to it. And maybe just try 1 or 2 at a time rather than trying to do all 6, 7, 8 different techniques.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I don't want to go through the checklist, but it is good to have in mind. Here are some tools. Lay it on us, Scott. Let's eat more pies. What are some of these components?
More pies. The M is the minimal encouragers. So this would be things like what you've just done there. Okay. And personally, it could be a head nod. Okay, or a little laugh. It just encourages people to keep talking. And when people are out of sync, maybe you're on the telephone to somebody and you think, are they watching TV?
Yeah.
Are they watching television whilst I'm talking to them? Because they'll be like, And you're like, hang on, I've already moved on. Why are you hi-hi-ing?
Well, they say sounds good. I was like, I didn't say anything. What is it that sounds good?
Yeah, that was 30 seconds ago. And so the O is the open questions. The what, the how, the which, the when. Try and avoid why if you can, but it just elicits get more engagement there. The R, that's the reflecting or the mirroring. This is when I might mirror or reflect back the last couple of words or the key word within what they've just said that I want to focus on. And so rather than it sounding like an interrogation with me bombarding you with lots of questions, I can just mirror the last couple of words or keyword from what you've just said. So we've got MORE is the emotional labeling. It looks like, it sounds like, it feels like, and that can be described to emotions as well as behavior. We'll go through my alphabet here. Okay, yeah, and paraphrasing. Paraphrasing is similar to summarizing. This is where I'd say, okay, Pete, it's okay if I just share with you where I think you're at with this deal right now. You think that we're asking for too much money, we've taken too long, and actually you're going to hold out. You want to hold out for a bit more equity in the business. Is that right? That's all I've done. I've just paraphrased and summarized back where I think you're at. And that's really important to get that validation. The I, that's the I statements. This is particularly good for dealing with certainly with my teenage kids when they're leaving wet towels on the bathroom floor, for example. It would be, when you leave towels on the floor, I feel a bit frustrated because we've all got to share the bathroom And in future, would you mind just hanging them up on the tower when you're finished? So I feel, because it's like you're owning how you're feeling and it doesn't sound too much like an accusation. Okay. E is for effective pauses. Again, it's great if you've got the confidence to sit or stand in a bit of silence. I can guarantee as human beings, we hate it. We're so uncomfortable. It doesn't take long before somebody will make a noise, utter some comment, ask a question, do something, shift. But I guess I've had years of practice of sitting across from criminals in interrogation rooms of questioning them. And the best skill we ever used was silence. We'd ask a question. So if you're labeling something, for example, Pete, sounds like you're frustrated right now. I'm not going to verbally vomit and continue talking. I'm just going to sit there and allow that to sink in. And then it's going to encourage you to then repeat. So E, and then S is the summarizing, which is very similar to paraphrasing. It just depends whether or not you use your language or their language. But I just urge people to not get too het up in all the different terms here. Just pick one or two that resonate. Because for some people, they just can't do mirroring. It just feels too awkward. Okay, well, practice paraphrasing. We'll just summarize when you have a conversation with somebody, particularly if they're talking for a long time, it's helpful for you to go, rather than going, I've lost track where you are. It's kind of just check in to make sure I've got this right. And then you repeat what your understanding of it. So that is more pies.
Yeah. Well, what I love about that is sometimes someone says a bunch of stuff and I'm thinking, I have no idea how to respond to that. And so I think that's just great to have in mind. More pies. It's like, no, well, here I have 8 options as to how I might respond to that. And they'll probably appreciate most of them more than me contributing my 2 cents to the matter.
You'll be able to contribute your 2 cents once you've utilized some of the more pies and they feel heard. They feel seen, heard, and understood. You've got yourself an open goal to have a free reign there.
One sponsor to check out is Harvard Business Review. This brilliant magazine, published at hbr.org, is the leading destination for smart management thinking. Fun fact, HBR has been mentioned in 108 episodes of the show. That's because HBR has great stuff that comes up often. They've got explainer videos, podcasts, real-world case studies, and much more. I think of HBR each night that I put on my special orange glasses. Their article, Will Blue Light Glasses Improve Your Sleep?, revealed that those who wore them reported better sleep and a 7% improvement in work performance as compared to those who wore the sham glasses. So I cite HBR anytime anyone tells me that I look silly wearing them. Now, much of HBR's content is available for free when you sign up at their site. Subscriptions that get you unlimited content cost $10 a month. If you visit hbr.org/subscriptions and enter the promo code AWESOME, you can save 10% off of that subscription. Again, to save 10% off of your HBR subscription, go to www.hbr.org/subscriptions and enter the promo code AWESOME. And big thanks to our sponsor, Acorns. Acorns makes it easy to start automatically saving and investing for your future. You don't need a lot of money or expertise to invest with Acorns. In fact, you can get started with just your spare change. Acorns recommends an expert-built portfolio that fits you and your money goals, then automatically invests your money for you. NerdWallet.com, whom I love on these sorts of matters, gives Acorns a whopping 4.7 stars and says, quote, if you want to make the most of your spare change, there's no better place to do that than Acorns. Head to acorns.com/awesome or download the Acorns app to start saving and investing for your future today. And we got a legal disclaimer here. It may not be representative of all clients. Tier 1 compensation provided. Compensation provides an incentive to positively promote Acorns. View important disclosures at acorns.com/awesome. Investing involves risk, including the loss of principal. Please consider your objectives, risk tolerance, and Acorns' fees before investing. Acorns Advisors LLC, Acorns, is an SEC-registered investment advisor. Brokerage services are provided to clients of Acorns by Acorns Securities LLC, member FINRA/SIPC. For more information, visit acorns.com. One sponsor to check out is Storyworth. Whenever I'm thinking about meaningful Father's Day gifts, Storyworth leaps to mind. Storyworth helps you preserve precious memories and stories from your father for years to come. Each week, Storyworth emails your loved ones a thought-provoking question that you get to help pick, such as, what's the bravest thing you've ever done? I personally love the prompt so much that I have refreshed Storyworth's questions page many times looking for more. Storyworth makes the writing process super quick and easy. All your loved one needs to do is respond to that email with a story, and then you get a quick copy of that. And after a year of this fun, Storyworth compiles your loved one's stories and photos into a beautiful keepsake hardcover book that you'll be able to share and revisit for generations to come. Families love Storyworth so much, they've got 25,000 five-star reviews on Trustpilot and have millions of stories preserved. So give all the fathers in your life a unique, heartfelt gift they'll all cherish for years. Storyworth. Right now, you can save $10 on your first purchase when you go to storyworth.com/awesome. That's storyworth.com/awesome to save $10 on your first purchase. All right. Well, now could you share with us a favorite quote, something you find inspiring?
Marcus Aurelius, what gets in the way becomes the way.
All right. And a favorite study or experiment or bit of research?
I'm a big fan also of Lisa Feldman Barrett. She's a professor of psychology at Northeastern University, I think. And she talks all her studies around emotions. And it really turns how we view and interpret and apply emotions on its head from what we thought 50 years ago. And she's doing some great research on how emotions are made and how we can best utilize them. But I think the one that had the biggest impact on me was probably non-violent communication. Marshall B. Rosenberg.
All right, thank you. And a favorite tool, something you use to be awesome at your job?
I think the thing that I use the most is my Whoop score because it gives me a real-time reading of, Scott, you probably need to take a bit of time out. You need to rest that nervous system because you're in the red or the amber. And I think, interestingly, dealing with the kidnappers, my scores were always pretty level. I was always getting good scores there in the feedback. It was dealing with maybe something closer to home, or as I said to you before, the crisis within the crisis that can send the heart rate rocketing or the nervous system out of whack.
All right. And is there a key nugget you share that really seems to connect and resonate with folks?
It's seek out worthy opponents. And what I mean by that is rather than seeing people as being difficult, if you can utilize what we've gone through on this recording today and put that into practice, particularly with those worthy opponents, those difficult people, they will make you a negotiation and communication superstar. Because actually, you're going to have to really bring your A game. You have to get to that next level when you're dealing with people like that. And
if folks want to learn more, get in touch, where'd you point them?
They go to my website, scottwalkerbooks.co.uk, and there's a whole host of information on there about workshops and books and other bits and pieces and courses that they can enjoy.
All right. And do you have a final challenge or call to action for folks looking to be awesome at their jobs?
Regulate those emotions. If you can, just become more conscious and more aware of when your emotions hit home. So if you can practice, okay, my aim for today is to regulate as much as possible. I feel the feeling, but drop the story. The more you can do that, the more you'll be able to just go through life with things, problems, challenges, issues, just bouncing off you and not landing.
All right. Scott, this has been fun. I wish you many successful negotiations.
Thank you very much.
I am loving Scott's 3-step approach for dealing with emotions. Interrupt the pattern, ride the wave, and ask better questions. And I really appreciate the nuances Scott went into with ride the wave. You're feeling the feeling and you're allowing yourself to feel the feeling, but you are tuning into the sensations, which naturally means you're tuning away from the story of why you're feeling it, why this is some bullcrap that doesn't belong, and rah, all that stuff. And I'm finding that helpful even in other contexts, which may not be anger-producing emotions to contend with, or in conversation, but maybe it's a matter of dread, procrastination, aversive tasks. I feel a dread sensation and I can kick off a story about how much I really don't want to. And then I engage the story like, oh, come on, Pete, it's not that big of a deal. You can do this. We got this. You've done this many times before. Come on, let's do it. Cue some Rocky music, maybe. I don't know. Instead of just feeling the feeling in its entirety, riding the wave and letting it go. Yes, here is dread, and feel it. Feel it with this intensity. I even make the noises like, the groan dread a little bit if I'm alone and I can get away with it. in the privacy of my office. It's like, all right, that feeling got a chance to be felt. That wave hath been ridden. And now, what do you know? It's a little bit behind me. I'm a little bit in better control. And then you can go through the next step, ask better questions, and then go after it. Powerful stuff. If you'd like a summary write-up of the wisdom that Scott shared in this conversation, please sign up for the Gold Nugget. Emails at awesomeatyourjob.com. Or if you want to see just the particular show notes and transcript for this episode, please visit awesomeatyourjob.com/EP955. Hope to catch you next time, and peace.
Thanks for listening. To get the most out of the show, we recommend 2 key things. First, check out the extra resources at awesomeatyourjob.com. You can find this episode's transcript and links, as well as the perfect episode for your situation. You can search the full-text transcripts of hundreds of episodes or explore episodes tagged by topic and competency covered. Second, subscribe to the podcast and get future episodes automatically. You can subscribe by telling Siri and several other smartphones and speakers, subscribe to the How to Be Awesome at Your Job podcast, or by tapping subscribe in your podcast player of choice. If you'd like some extra help figuring out podcasts and how subscriptions work, visit awesomeatyourjob.com/subscribe for guidance. Hope to catch you on the next episode of How to Be Awesome at Your Job.